Welcome to the Rustic Garden Homestead. Today's video is really how to make your tomato transplant life easier. We spend a lot of time growing transplants for like 8 weeks, 10 weeks indoors. We try and get them out early into the ground, and sometimes they struggle or they don't really produce any sooner. The transplants here are 4 weeks old. These are perfect transplants. Not a lot of work went into them. As long as I get them into the soil at the right time, they're going to be awesome plants. So the plants this size will very quickly catch up to the size of these tomato plants once planted outside in the right conditions. So again, the bottom line is what I'm trying to do is not so much say that you're making mistakes, but showing you ways that you can just save your time. Like, you really don't need to grow tomato plants 8, 10, 12 weeks. Getting them outside as transplants into the right conditions is going to make all the difference. Let me show you some of the ideas that I have to make growing transplants, tomato transplants, a lot easier for you. One mistake we make is we grow our tomato plants too long as transplants. They really don't need to grow 8, 10, 12 weeks as a transplant. And for some reason we think a bigger plant going into the garden gets us production sooner. And that's not really true. A lot of the things we'll be talking about today impact how quickly your tomato plant grows. These guys have been growing forever. They're oversized. This one is actually fallen over and is rooted out into this container. Now, they look pretty good. You know, upper growth looks fine. These are just examples of plants. Yes, we can take care of them in larger containers. We can grow them bigger. But when we put them outside, they still have a small root ball, comparatively speaking, to the size of the plant. The root system has to catch up to the plant, and they just don't produce sooner. And that's the whole goal. I'm not saying that this isn't going to work out. You're still going to get tomato plants, but you're doing extra work taking care of them when you're not going to really get a benefit from it, in my opinion. A great sized tomato plant is something that looks like this. You know, good green growth. It's not flowering. That's another issue when you're holding these past 8 weeks. I've taken the flowers off of the plants over here. Flowering tomato plants, tomatoes that are fruiting, you just don't want that before they go into the ground. You want the energy going into the root system and to leaf development, to stem, to growth development. These look pretty nice, and when you pop it out, you know, the roots are starting to coil at the bottom, but this is a great sized plant. This is all you really need for a transplant in size. And this guy's about 8 weeks old, a little bit older. You know, smaller is fine. The next thing we're going to be talking about is soil temperature. Getting your plants out early, like today is April 19th, getting them out, say, April 1st, protecting them from a frost. We had a frost last night. You can do all that. But with the cold soil, the root system gets the message it's too cold and the plant doesn't grow. It sort of just sits there and shiver. We'll talk about that next. So you don't need to grow tomato transplants 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. A transplant that's, 4 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe 8 weeks old is perfect to go into the garden. Here's a good example of what I'm talking about with the soil temperature. Last night it got down to, or at least it was supposed to get down to, 38 degrees. Coming out this morning, you can see frost on the grass. So even if you're several degrees above freezing, that doesn't mean in your area you're not going to get frost. Now, the frost, of course, doesn't harm the cool weather crops, but what it does is it drops that couple of inches of soil temperature, 10 centimeters, 4 inches of soil temperature down. That colder soil temperature just will cause your tomato to sit there. Maybe it doesn't get frost or get damaged, but it's not going to grow in cold soil. And getting the plant out early really doesn't benefit the gardener or the plant. One of the biggest mistakes we make with our tomato transplants is we try and get them outside way too early. Sometimes 2, 3, 4 weeks early. We're getting them into cold ground. Tomato plants are warm weather crops. They get a message to grow based on warmth, soil warmth around their roots. And when we put them into soil that's too cold, they're just going to sit there. So we're doing extra work, protecting them from frost potentially, and hoping that they grow and hoping we get tomatoes sooner to the table. That's not going to happen putting these into cold ground. Generally speaking, tomato plants like 65 degree Fahrenheit soil, that's about 18 degrees Celsius, and that's the top 2-4 inches 5-10 centimeters. So you're really waiting for the warmth to be the ambient surrounding temperature, but also the soil temperature. Over the next 10 days, the nights are going to be about 50 degrees or higher, 10 degrees Celsius, and the days are going to be 70 degrees higher. I think that's about 21 degrees Celsius. Those temperatures are a good guide for letting you know the soil temperature is warming up. And that's when you really want to get the tomato plants in the ground. Getting these out early isn't going to give you a jump on the season. The other thing that's really important, and I alluded to it earlier, was the root system. If you have a small root ball and a really big upper growth, upper canopy of your tomato plant, that plant's going to struggle. This is a good ratio. These plants are about 8 weeks old. You know, nice size root ball, not too much upper green growth. That's a good kind of ratio. These tomato plants are 4 weeks old. You know, maybe another week's worth of growth. But again, the ratio for root system to upper growth is really good. Visually, this is what I kind of recommend. When you get that big, like I was showing you earlier, that tall, overgrown tomato plant, putting it into the ground with a little root ball is just going to stress the plant out, because that little root system is trying to support all that green growth. It's getting hit by the sun, and it's not going to work. The plants struggle. So you don't need oversized upper growth. These plants are going to do perfectly fine. And to be honest with you, putting this plant in when the soil temperature is right, putting one of these in same time when the soil temperature is right, both these plants are going to catch up to each other. It's all about soil temperature and a good ratio of root ball to upper green growth. This is a good example of root size. The 4-week-old plant on the left is going to match the growth of this plant. Even though the ratio of roots to growth on the plant on the right side is pretty good, this is better. It's a bigger root ball compared to the amount of green growth. The roots are going to accelerate being put into the soil when it's warm. They're going to grow quickly. More roots mean the upper growth is going to be even quicker. So very quickly, the small plant will catch up to this larger plant. And I want to stress again, here's another good example, just a tiny root ball that's going to dry out really quickly. So even though the soil here is moist and doing well, this plant's only going to be living off of this root ball for a good 7 to 14 days. So water it every other day at least to make sure you got water supporting the growth of the plant. Another mistake that can be made is at planting. So there's mulch down here, which is great. And mulch is great for conserving water, and it's good to use. However, when you're first putting in the tomato plants, you don't want to mulch them. You want to clear out any mulch you have, just put it to the side, bring it back after the tomato's been growing and the soil temperature and the day temperatures have really warmed up. You want the sun right now, early on, to be coming and hitting the earth, and it's going to warm up that couple of inches that I was talking about, that top 2-4 inches. When you're setting up the planting hole, certainly just loosen up the whole space. If you need to, you can add in your compost or your other organic fertilizers. I know that my bed is well prepped. I'm just going to use a water-soluble fertilizer to take care of this. But you definitely want to move the mulch back and leave it off of there for a while until you know that the temperatures have really warmed up and the warm temperatures are here to stay. The mulch will keep the cold temperatures in the soil. It's going to act like an insulator, keeping the soil cooler. By removing it, the roots are going to warm up quicker. That's going to send a signal to the plant to grow because it's got the warmth, and your tomato plant's going to take off. One of the bigger mistakes people make is they don't water the plant enough for the first really 14 days. Everything looks good, right ratio of root size to plant size in my opinion, but keep in mind your tomato plant still has a small root ball, relatively speaking. So even though all the soil is nice and saturated, all it has for roots and for a way to get water out of the soil is out of this space. With the sun now hitting the plant regularly, it's going to really use up water quickly. And in one day of a nice day like today, it's going to be 70. This root ball can dry out, even though there's moisture all over the place. So you really want to, one, water your transplant in really well when day one, but every other day, make sure you're giving it some water, because you have to keep in mind, again, the root system has not spread out all over the place. After about 14 days, the root system is established, the soil is warm, it's able to pull nitrogen, it's able to pull nutrients out of the ground. You're gonna see your tomato plant really accelerate and take off in about 2 weeks. I mean, I wanna say, I wouldn't necessarily say these are mistakes. These are just things that will make growing tomatoes easier, where you don't have to spend extra time growing plants longer or taking care of them. Get them, into the ground when the conditions are right. So this week, because of the increase in the warmth at night and the day, I'm going to be planting my tomatoes, and some of them go into this bed. What you can do now is just clear that mulch away, like I was talking about before. I'm not going to be planting today, it'll be later this week. But go ahead and clear out where you're going to be growing so that the sun's hitting it and warming it up. And you can also, like I know the tomato plant's going to go in here. I want this soil to be warm. So you can go ahead, dig a hole, really. And it's nice to see worms in there too, by the way. It means the soil's nice and healthy. Let the sun for a couple of days just warm this space up. That really makes a difference. Again, I want to stress, warm roots signal to the plant that the conditions are right and the plant takes off. Keep in mind, coming out of winter and spring, the soil is cold. The deeper you dig down, the colder it's going to be. The top warms first. Over time, with 50, 60 degree rains, warm rains, the soil's going to warm up. So when we normally plant a tomato plant, we're planting it maybe 4 or 6 inches deep. Sun's going to take care of it. It's going to warm. In the past, I've talked about it. A lot of people talk about it. The reason this is not necessarily a mistake is because your tomato plants still grow. But you can accelerate the speed of the growth by just following these tips. So, here's a bigger, oversized plant that's going to be okay. It's going to produce. And usually we say, well, plant it to about half the depth of the stem. And then we dig down 8, 10 inches, even sometimes 12 inches deep. Dropping that root ball deeper into the hole is going to create colder temperatures around the roots. And this guy is going to grow more slowly until things warm up. Now, a couple of weeks maybe doesn't matter to you, but if you want your plants to get to a good size early, start flowering and producing earlier, a shallow planting is best, 4 or 6 inches deep. Now, this is for an experiment, because the other way to grow, and look at the roots, they come right out. All these bumps along here, those are all root nodes from water sitting on here in the greenhouse. So rather than plant the plant deeper, like to a depth like this from my fingers down or something like that, just do a trench. The trench is perfect. All the roots are going to come out in that top 2-4 inches of the soil where it's warm. The plant is going to get that message from the sun, and it's going to really accelerate and grow. So the best way to plant this, I think, is just by letting the vine stay more shallow through here. Let me show you what that looks like. I just want to cut in. Look at all those worms. I'm not even amending this today. I will link in a video for amending the planting hole, but I know that my soil is well prepped. And when you see worms like this, you're getting in the right amount of organic matter, and everything is just, going really well. Now, this is the overgrown tomato plant that I showed in the beginning. And yeah, this plant's going to turn out to be okay. And I just want to be clear, what I'm saying is all that time spending taking care of this is a 12-week-old plant. If you want to do that, that's fine. But if you don't have the time, if you have other things going on, you can just grow a tomato transplant 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and it's going to do really well. So instead of dropping this plant down a good 10 inches into the soil, 12 inches, 25 centimeters to where it's going to be colder, middle of April, I'm just doing a trench. The root ball is going to only be covered by maybe an inch or two of soil. This whole space is going to warm up. The roots are going to go into the ground. 2 inches, 5 inches will warm up very quickly. Plant's going to want to accelerate and take off and grow. And I'm just going to cover it up You know, nothing fancy, just like that. Again, check out my video if you want to see how I would set up a planting hole if I felt like it needed more amendments in there. So this guy will take off, it will grow, and in a couple of weeks I'll prune it up and I'll start sending it right up this post. Tomato plants are essentially a vine, and wherever they fall over, touch the ground, roots come out. So they get a lot of their moisture and their nutrients from shallow roots, you know, all over the ground. Deeper roots, we tend to say, well, it's great, they go down deeper, they're gonna get to nutrients, they're gonna, you know, get to moisture, and that's all kind of true. But the way a tomato vine grows is it just sends roots out all over the place in that top 2, 4, 6 inches of the soil. So we just really have to maintain that. Again, I want to stress the importance of the warmth. I can feel the sun now, you know, warming me up. It's going to be warming up that soil, and that warmth is what's going to accelerate the growth of the tomato plant and get you tomatoes earlier to the table. Another thing you want to do when you put your tomato transplants in, and most of these plants have been cleaned up, but if you see flower clusters, remove them. You don't want the plant to be spending energy growing flowers and growing fruit. At this point, you just want them to take care of the roots, the leaves, and the upper growth. Please subscribe. This is an experimental bed. Plant back there, a little over 8 weeks old. This guy's just approaching 4 weeks, believe it or not. And the plant here has been growing for well over 12 weeks. And the whole point to this video is understanding the conditions and the needs of your tomato plants, your transplants. This way you're not spending extra time taking care of plants indoors, or you're putting them out too early, worried about frost and taking care of them. Just give them what they need, put them out when they need to go out. So these plants, I believe, and I've done experiments over the last couple of years, they're going to catch up to each other. You're not going to see any one of these plants producing that much sooner. This guy, maybe, we'll see. But the other issue that people have with tomato plants is they don't use water-soluble fertilizer enough, actually in the garden. So organic granular is nice. Notice I didn't have to put any in here. I've got plenty of compost. I put mulch on top of my beds, compost on top of my beds in the fall. I save money now. I don't really need the organic fertilizer. But the water-soluble fertilizer immediately supplies nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to your plants. It's in the form they can use right away. So what your plants want right now is easy nitrogen, easy phosphorus, easy potassium. So give them a big drink of any water-soluble fertilizer, whatever one you want to use, and don't be afraid to pour it on. And then we'll get to the last tip. But just really soak in the water-soluble. That's plenty. I'll just show you how much I'm giving them. And pour it around because they're going to send roots out looking for stuff. You know, this is 2 gallons pretty much going across these 3 plants. All right, these plants are good for at least another 4 weeks, if not 6 weeks. The other thing we tend to do is we start worrying too much about the ratios of N, P, and K, how often to fertilize them. Plenty of fertilizer. We gave them a huge drink of the water-soluble, and I really won't be feeding these again for at least 6 weeks. My soil's in good shape, maybe a little bit sooner if you're just getting started. But you don't have to be out here feeding these every 2 weeks or anything like that. Just let them go. After about a week, when temperatures are warm, I'll put the mulch back down. That will help conserve water. And again, don't forget to water these regularly for a good 2 weeks until they get the root systems established. Thanks so much for watching. Please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com. I sell tomato and pepper seeds for $1.75 a pack. All other seeds are $1.50. Thanks so much for watching.